The blind girl named Sophie, a former alpine skier, is packing her things and getting ready to leave home. Despite her blindness, Sophie manages everything on her own. The girl walks very quietly so as not to disturb any family members. However, when Sophie reached for the door handle, the mother noticed her and demanded an explanation. Now Sophie just wants to be alone, and a taxi is already waiting for her. However, the mother insisted on driving her. This led to an argument between them. The mother knows that her daughter has managed to save $42,000. The question is, where did this money come from? Sophie reminded her that she looked after houses. Allegedly, the employers are satisfied with her work, so they paid her more. In the end, Sophie refused to go with her mother. The woman is very worried about the daughter and hugged her goodbye. Sophie left in the taxi. She had not even reached her destination when the mother called her. Sophie was supposed to call back when she was approaching, but she didn't. Sophie is annoyed by constant calls from her mother. She lied about the poor reception here and hung up. Finally, the journey came to an end. The driver offered to help Sophie with her things, but she declined. Sophie doesn't like accepting help from anyone. Deborah, the homeowner, greeted her. Sophie's responsibilities include looking after the house and taking care of the cat. Deborah recently went through a divorce and is going on vacation. After saying goodbye to the cat and Sophie, the woman left. To ensure she doesn't lose the cat, Sophie put a special collar with a tracker on him. After that, Sophie called her friend Cam. Unlike Sophie, he could see the huge house through video communication. With his help, Sophie can navigate. The house has many rooms and luxuries. Sophie explored every corner to orient herself later. The reception is poor here, so the conversation kept getting interrupted. Descending to the wine cellar, Sophie picked up the most expensive bottle. However, Cam asked Sophie to put it back. Sophie often stole expensive alcohol from the houses she was looking after and asked Cam to sell it. That's how she managed to save up the money. However, Cam no longer wants to be a part of it. Initially, he agreed only because he thought she needed money. Because of this, Sophie and Cam had a falling out. Cam continues to be involved in skiing, but Sophie is now deprived of that. She has lost the meaning of life. The mother shared the Be My Eyes app for the visually impaired with Sophie, but she asked her voice assistant to delete the message. Soon Sophie received a call from Deborah, who wants to make sure everything is okay. Sophie only now activated the security system, though she should have done it earlier. When Sophie went outside, the door locked. This prompted Sophie to download the Be My Eyes app. However, it didn't help. Sophie can't even turn to neighbors for help because the nearest house is far away. In the end, Sophie was forced to call one of the assistants through the app again. This time Kelly answered, and having understood the situation, advised to call the police. However, Sophie doesn't want to call anyone. Kelly asked her to walk around the house to see if there are any ways to get inside other than the front door. Through video communication, Kelly can see everything. Sophie can no longer hold the phone steady because it's cold outside, and she doesn't have the cane with her. Eventually Sophie managed to get inside the house. However, the alarm went off. In panic, Sophie knocked over everything in her path. Nevertheless, following Kelly's guidance, she was able to deactivate the security system. Although Sophie doesn't like accepting help from anyone, this time she was genuinely grateful to Kelly. Sophie still hopes she can return to alpine skiing. However, she will need a guide to be her eyes. At night when Sophie went to sleep, burglars approached the house. They knew for sure that the homeowner had left, and they had planned everything carefully. Deactivating the security system, the burglars entered unhindered. Sophie, accustomed to paying attention to the slightest sounds, woke up. While the burglars were looking for the safe, Sophie got out of bed and went to check what was happening. Soon the burglars realized they were not alone in the house. Ernie, the gang leader, went through each room, while his accomplices tried to open the safe. Sophie heard voices in the adjacent room. When she accidentally broke a vase, she attracted attention. The most important thing for Sophie is to have the phone with her at all times. Sophie managed to hide before Ernie noticed her. Sophie immediately called 911. Considering her location, the police will not arrive soon. Ernie continued to look around each room while Sophie tried to reach Cam, but he didn't answer. Then, using the voice assistant to open the Be My Eyes app, Sophie called Kelly. Sophie is certain that the burglars are looking for her, and there are at least 2 of them. Kelly advised Sophie to go down to the basement and hide until the police arrive, but Sophie doesn't think it's a good idea because she will be trapped in the basement. Following Kelly's guidance, Sophie was going to make her way out of the house. If she walked quietly, she would make it. Meanwhile, the burglars were attempting to crack the safe. Sophie could hear them discussing the presence of someone in the house. While Dave continued his work, Ernie intended to take another look around the house. Due to panic, Sophie acted recklessly and got caught by the burglars. The call was interrupted. Kelly couldn't do anything to help her. Checking Sophie's phone, Ernie discovered that she had called the police. Contacting the boss, Ernie asked how to proceed. They faced a dilemma: release Sophie or make her silent forever? Tearfully, the girl told them she was blind and couldn't see them. The boss instructed the accomplices to leave Sophie alone and leave before the police arrived. Dave agreed, unlike Otis, who wanted to get the money. Suddenly Sophie said she would help them if they paid her an equal share. Everyone agreed to these conditions, and only Dave had doubts because Sophie could change her mind at any moment. Sophie called the police and stated that her call was false. However, the dispatcher informed her that according to the law, a patrol car must come in any case. Now Sophie has to convince the police that everything is fine. She voluntarily became an accomplice to this crime. Meanwhile, Kelly is trying to figure out how to help Sophie. Kelly saw the burglars with her own eyes through video communication and is determined to save Sophie at any cost. The police arrived at the house. Sophie is getting ready to play her part. The police officer immediately found the situation suspicious. Sophie didn't want to open the door, stating that the homeowner prohibited her, but the officer insisted. Sophie said she was just looking after the cat. The officer was going to go around all the rooms to make sure everything was okay. The officer finds it hard to believe that a blind girl could mistake a television for intruders. Seeing that the safe panel is open, the officer asked who did it. Sophie assured that she would talk to Deborah about it. Before leaving, the officer asked Sophie again if there was anyone else in the house. Perhaps Sophie is just afraid, that's why she remains silent. Sophie said that everything is fine and that she doesn't need any help. Suddenly the phone rang. The officer returned to the house to bring Sophie her phone. It was Cam, who saw the missed call from Sophie. The girl said that everything was okay and hung up. And that could have been the end of it, but suddenly the officer was informed that someone who was talking to a blind girl via video communication had contacted the police about burglars. The officer realized that Sophie was trying to deceive her. At that moment, Ernie came out, intending to surrender voluntarily. Ernie assured that he was alone, but the officer didn't believe him and called for backup, then went to look for the rest of the burglars. Otis attacked the officer, taking her life. Dave doesn't like how things are unfolding, and neither does Ernie. But there's no turning back. Meanwhile, Sophie contacted Kelly again and said that the burglars had dealt with the cop. Sophie had a gun in her hands, trying to find a way out of the house in an attempt to escape. Kelly asked Sophie to stop panicking, or she would give herself away. It was too dark, so it was difficult for Kelly to guide Sophie. Meanwhile, the burglars continued their attempts to crack the safe. Sophie stumbled and fell, dropping the gun. Surely this attracted the attention of the burglars, and now they are looking for her. Hearing footsteps nearby, Sophie hid and fell silent. But Ernie found her anyway. Following Kelly's guidance, Sophie kept him in her sights. Ernie told Sophie there was no need to worry. Kelly was shouting for Sophie to shoot. Sophie hesitated for a long time, but when Ernie got too close, she fired. Now Sophie has to get out of here as quickly as possible. The problem is that her phone is about to run out of power. Hearing the shots, Otis searched all the rooms. When he came across Sophie, she shot, following Kelly's command. Despite the injury, Otis continued to pursue her. Sophie had to shoot several more times. Otis was neutralized. Following Kelly's advice, Sophie took lifeless Otis's walkie-talkies. Only Dave remained, who unsuspecting continued to crack the safe. The battery charge is running out. Kelly hastily explained to Sophie how to get to the exit. Sophie asked Kelly why she spoke like a military person. Kelly admitted that she used to serve in the army. Unable to bear it, Sophie confessed that she had been in cahoots with these burglars, all for the sake of money. Now Sophie feels guilty because the police officer perished because of her. Dave realized that something was wrong. None of his partners responded. The phone is about to run out of power, and Sophie will be without her guide. Contacting the boss, Dave said that the safe is almost cracked. The only problem is that the guys have disappeared somewhere. Dave is unaware that Sophie is standing behind him, and following Kelly's cues, aims at him. Suddenly Sophie fired but missed. Dave pleaded with Sophie to let him go. The safe is open, so she can take all the money. The phone died, and the connection was cut off. Sophie was left defenseless. Dave was about to take his share and leave. Sophie can take everything else. However, Sophie screamed at him not to move. When Dave didn't obey her, she took his life. Receiving a call from the main boss, Sophie said that everything is ready. Money is the only thing she wants. Rico, the main boss, arrived and loudly asked Sophie if she wants her share. Now Sophie is an accomplice to the crime, whether she likes it or not. Sophie was hiding. Then Rico called 911 and reported that burglars had broken into his house. The police would arrive in 5 minutes. This way Rico covered his tracks. His original plan was to get rid of Ernie and the others. Deborah, Rico's ex-wife, took everything after the divorce. But Rico was not going to accept that. Sophie cut off all the electricity in the house. Now she and Rico were on equal footing. Turning on his flashlight, Rico searched for Sophie throughout the house. The girl, hiding, discreetly took a glass from the table, then threw it as far as possible to lead Rico astray. However, Rico was not so easily deceived. He shot several times, injuring Sophie. Despite this, Sophie did everything not to give herself away. She needed to hold on for a few more minutes until the police arrived. When Rico's phone rang, Sophie managed to orient herself and fired. The girl didn't immediately realize that she missed. A few seconds later, Rico attacked her from behind. However, Sophie was able to reach for an object and neutralize Rico. Some time passed. Sophie's mother picked her up from the rehabilitation center. Due to injuries, Sophie currently moves around in a wheelchair. By the way, Sophie plans to return to skiing as soon as she can walk. No one knows that Sophie stole money from Deborah's house. After some time, she called Kelly and boasted about her success in sports. Cam will be her eyes. So, Sophie has found meaning in life once again.